And I'm just going to wait a minute before we go live, but I'll mute myself now, but obviously if you need me, just say. So I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to session 12, part of the Tetley and the Art House Panic Together programme of events and workshops for creatives across the region online. Just before we start, I just want to remind everybody that this workshop, this talk is being recorded. And also, if anyone would need the live transcript, you can click on the button below that says live transcript and access it through that way. I'm Damon Jackson Waldock. I'm the programme director here at the Art House in Wakefield. My pronouns are he, him. I am a, let's say, mid to late 30s male. I'm a white male with dark hair who's going slightly grey. I'm wearing a dark t-shirt with a green jumper, and I have really large circular black frame glasses. So thank you so much for everybody who's come to session 12. This is coming towards the end of our Panic Together series of events, which has been fantastic. And I'm now delighted to say that we're joined by Zita Holbourne, who will be hosting this session called Art Workers of Leeds and Wakefield Unite. Zita is a multidisciplinary artist who creates works as a writer and a curator, a poet and a vocalist, and has had works featured in many shows, including the Tate and the V&A, and has performed poetry as part of many festivals and events. She is an award-winning community and human rights campaigner and activist, and across the 3 decades that she's been working has gained vast experience of working in the arts and culture sector and also employment law. A long-time trade unionist, she is the National Vice President of the Public and Commercial Services Union, the PCS, here in the UK, and is the Joint National Chair of Artists Union England, who campaign and advocate for fairness and lawful working practices for freelance creatives and artists. Zita is also the founder and creator of the Roots Culture Identity Art Exhibition, which provides opportunities for Black, Asian and global majority artists, especially those that are younger or early career creatives who may face barriers in life, but also within the arts and culture sector. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us, and I want to welcome and hand over to Zita for this today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for that introduction. Greetings to everybody attending, either in person or online. So Artists Union England was established in 2014 with the aim of improving pay, equality and working conditions for artists. We are affiliated to the Trade Union Congress. We are affiliated to the General Federation of Trade Unions, which are national UK bodies for trade unions to sign up to, and we're a certified union, and that means that we can negotiate with employers and represent our members who are employees or workers. The union was initially set up in 2014 by a handful of artists who had come together and felt that there was a gap and a need for us to be able to come together and organise in a more structural way around a whole host of issues that we were facing in terms of barriers to participation, discrimination, low and unequal pay, and inadequate conditions, because of course a lot of artists are on short-term contracts and self-employed. Next slide, please. So this is just a screen grab from our website, show you what it looks like, and you can go on there and have a browse and see some more information about us. And the reason why we're an artists union England is because there was already an artists union in Scotland, and so we couldn't establish a UK-wide one. So it was a one for England that was established. Our annual membership is £42, which is equivalent to £3.50 a month, which is actually much lower than the vast majority of unions. Next slide, please. So there are a host of membership benefits you gained from joining, and whilst we don't want to be a servicing union, we're an organising union, which is quite important to us. There are some benefits of membership of any union, including ours, and things that are particularly useful and helpful to artists, which includes public and products liability insurance, which comes as part of your membership. There's access to free legal advice from our solicitors, Moorish solicitors, and a host of different resources and information, access to meetings and events that members can participate and engage in, also access to training if you want to become active in the union and you want more information on the different roles that you might want to get involved in. And that training is either provided by us or through the Trade Union Congress or the General Federation of Trade Unions. Next slide, please. So who we represent, we're a union for visual artists. A lot of our artists are, a lot of our members are, of course, multi and interdisciplinary, which is the case with many artists, including myself. I'm not just a visual artist, but as was explained in the lovely introduction, involved in a range of artists. But you do, there is a criteria for joining the union, and you do need to be a visual applied or socially engaged artist to join. And there's a slide that will come later, give a bit more information about that. So yeah, the next slide, please. I'm just looking at the time, just seeing if I'm on track. So this is a slide, and apologies because I don't think it's very clear to read on this screen that you're looking at, but you can access it on our website, and I'm going to go through in a bit more detail what this is. This is our good practice charter, and for most unions, collective bargaining is a key feature of the work that a trade union does. So that's negotiating with the employers and negotiating pay, terms and conditions and policies on behalf of a body of workers in that particular workplace. But as mentioned, a lot of our members are self-employed, working on short-term contracts. So we don't quite have the same relationship as other unions with, for example, if you're a shop worker or a civil servant or a train driver. And so we established a good practice charter in consultation with members, and we ran some workshops where we developed the different elements of the good practice charter that employers could sign up to who are working with artists and employ artists in whatever way they employ them. I think we've lost the slideshow. Oh, it's back again. So the key principles, as you can see on the screen, and I'll say a bit about each one. It's first, valuing and rewarding artists, which is about making sure that we have contracts, having clear information on fees and payments, when payments will be made, because we see a lot of situations where people are not paid on time, or people try and renege on payments to artists. Copyright protections, a dispute process, so that if there was an issue, the art workers would still have the same rights as the employees in terms of challenging any discrimination or inappropriate things that have happened. And we would recommend that as a bare minimum, those employers use the Artists Union England rates of pay, which are also on our website. So the second element is on health and safety, ensuring that health and safety is adhered to. We know that, for example, with studios, there's lots of inadequacy in terms of health and safety, and making sure that those employers are adhering to the law on health and safety and to the Health and Safety Executive Standards, which is the national body that oversees health and safety in the UK. Next one is on diversity and equality, ensuring that they adhere to legislation on equality, that they're inclusive, that they have cultural awareness, that they don't discriminate, they don't harass or bully on grounds of discrimination. They use the social model of disability, and actually that they're not just looking at what they do as a workplace, but they're looking at barriers and inaccessibility and discrimination across society more widely, and addressing those issues and concerned with those issues. Working with trade unions, of course, would be key for us. We would want them to recognise trade unions, to negotiate with trade unions, and to acknowledge and respect the trade union membership. And having trade unions present in your workplace is a strengthening arm in terms of the issues and barriers that you might face. Workplaces that have trade unions in place are normally better in terms of how they treat employees, because they know they can't get away with it, and there is a proper setup and structure for consulting members through the trade unions. And then the next element is social responsibility, ensuring fair treatment and pay for all, working with communities, looking at issues of mental well-being, policies and practice to support people who have mental health conditions. So those are sort of the main elements for that, but you can look at it in more detail on our website. So it's something that you could present to employers that you're working with as artists and ask them to sign up to this, and you could get us involved in talking to that employer to get them to officially sign up to the charter. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier about there's certain criteria to join, that you need to be a visual applied or socially engaged artist, and then you have to meet sort of 3 of a list of criteria that might mean that you've exhibited, you're a qualified artist, you are selling your works and working professionally as an artist. So if you're thinking of joining, it's important to have a look at that criteria, make sure you meet it. We don't monitor it. It's for you to determine that for yourself, that you meet the criteria to join. So we don't question you on it or challenge it. If you tell us, yes, you've met that criteria, you want to join, you join, and that's that. Next slide, please. The PPL insurance is something that we know a lot of our members who join find to be quite important to them, because it's something that's necessary a lot of the time in the work they do, and to protect their artworks in exhibitions and in transit, but also the insurance will cover you for up to 5 million. It covers accidental injury, loss and damage to your art, and it covers exhibiting and teaching. Next slide. So on our website, just to show you how it looks, you can click on these buttons. There are some things that are behind the login, which means you need to be a member before you can access, but there are some things that you can have a look and browse on our website. There are a range of resources there. There's like a studio checklist. There's stuff on health and safety. You can see who signed, you can see the good practice charter, and you can also see who signed up to the good practice charter. There, when we run surveys, we put them on there. There's information about the courses you can access, tax and copyright advice, amongst other things. And we campaign on a host of different things, which aren't just about the workplace and employment relations, but which are about the world outside and human rights and society, which is why you can see there's a tab there on COP26. Next slide, please. During the pandemic, we campaigned and lobbied the government regarding the impact on artists and our sector, including the fact that most of our members were falling between the gaps when it came to government measures to support people through the pandemic. Most of our members found their work cancelled suddenly and abruptly, with no suggestion that it was ever going to come back to them, and found themselves in dire straits and deep poverty. The majority of our members are women, so many of them had caring responsibilities and children, so there's a knock-on impact on families. So we know that our members were struggling, facing deprivation and poverty. And because many of our members are socially engaged artists, they're the ones that are doing work in the community with people who are marginalized and the most vulnerable people in society. And that work was cancelled because of the pandemic very, very abruptly. And also a lot of our members were having to pay for studios, for the rent for their studios, which they couldn't access because they were closed because of the lockdowns and during the pandemic. Some of our members set up the AUE Solidarity Fund to just do a little bit to try and help our members through this really difficult period, which is continuing to run. And so monthly, members can claim from the Solidarity Fund. We've been trying to do some fundraising events and raise money because it's a separate fund to our membership fund. And there's a range of different fundraising initiatives we've done. So we welcome anybody, that would want to help us with that in doing a fundraising event. And then people can claim £100 a month if they need to, and they're struggling financially. Next slide, please. Just checking the time, see how I'm doing. I can't see the time on the screen now. Yeah, I think I've already covered this one in terms of the membership and the cost, but just to flag up on it, that in order to join, that £42 has to be paid in one sum, because we don't have the system in place currently for people to pay monthly installments. But as soon as you join, you will be issued with the legal documents and letter from our solicitors for the PPL Insurance. So you will get that cover instantly. Next slide, please. So why have a trade union for artists? Well, because of all the different things that I've already flagged up, there's a dire need, a desperate need for us to have that support and that solidarity and that structure, because we face a host of different things in terms of our pay, how we're treated. We're not often, very often not seen as workers, suggesting that we can live off thin air and create art and do work as artists out of the love of art. Like, we don't have to pay rent, put food on the table like everybody else. So, those are the crucial things. So we can work together and we can campaign, we can get representation, we can raise things collectively that impact on us. We hope and aim to get improved pay terms, conditions and rights, to challenge discrimination, because there is discrimination in the arts and culture sector for many equality groups, including Black and brown people, women, disabled people in particular. And it's also young people who are impacted as well, that can't even get a foot in the door because of, you know, having had 10 years of austerity, now hit by the pandemic, even to try and establish their careers and get started. And so all of those things, but we're also concerned about the world we live in, and we give solidarities to others, and we participate in the democratic structures of the wider trade union movement. Just to explain the photos that are on there. So the photo with the solidarity sign is at our AGM. So we have an annual AGM where all our decisions and policies are formed through motions, and we're elected. So we're an elected body. There's a picture of me at CARFAC conference in Canada. CARFAC is the trade union for artists in Canada, where I was invited to be a speaker at their conference. So, you know, we have an external, an international outlook as well. You can see our members standing up for the rights of Palestinian people, British artists supporting Palestine there in one of the pictures. We're supporting strikers from UCU, which is the University and College Lecturers Trade Union, who have had some industrial action. And so we stand in solidarity with them. Come to the picket lines and their protests, but also some of our members are members of that union too, because they're lecturers. And then we participate in the trade union conferences of our federations, the GFTU and the TUC. So for example, I sit on the GFTU executive, I attend the TUC General Council on behalf of Artists Union England. The picture you can see is at the TUC Black Workers Conference, our delegate there for AUE, Antonietta. That's in 2019, but there are also TUC conferences for women, LGBT plus people, disabled people and young people. And we try and have a voice in that wider movement and bring the issues that are impacting on our members and our industry and sector to the wider trade union movement. So it's part of the campaigning. And we're also building our own equality structures, which we invite our members to come and participate in and to run and lead and engage in. In my other union, PCS, I'm on the Education and Culture Workers Committee for PSI, Public Services International, which is an international trade union body. And last year I wrote a manifesto for recovery for arts and culture sector, and key to that was addressing discrimination and not going back to how it was before, because actually it wasn't very good before. So we want to go back forward into a positive future, free of discrimination, and I wrote that on behalf of PSI, so that's an international strategy. We have a national executive committee, which is completely run by volunteers. We have regional organisers, local representatives who organise town and city meetups, and they were physical before the pandemic, in-person ones rather. And of course, lots of things have been virtual, nearly all virtual since then. And we send out a regular newsletter to members. Our National Executive Committee is our decision-making body, but we're a democratic union, so we're all elected, the members of that committee. And we have an AGM, as I mentioned, where we get elected. We hold artist talks regularly, and we also work very closely with other creative industry unions on common issues and campaigns. So we want members to have a voice, to take part, to be active, to build the union. Being part of a union means we're not alone. We can form collective strategies, support and represent each other, strengthen our voice and our industrial strength as well, and our rights, and be part of a family working together, so that we can have a positive future as artists, but also so we create a positive legacy for the next generation of artists coming through. So slide 13, please, final slide. So that's just about how you can get in touch with us, and you could follow us on social media. We've got Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and so you can see what we're doing and engage with what we're doing there. You can have a look at our website, as I mentioned earlier. Our email is there, and my Artists Union email is there. And I know we're going to go into a Q&A now, and if there is anything that somebody wanted to ask that they wouldn't want to ask publicly, then do feel free to email me after this event, zita@artists.unionengland.org.uk, with any questions or queries you have going forward about anything I've said and about the union in general. And thanks very much for listening to me, and thank you very much for having me and hosting this event.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. It's great to hear about the work that you do, not only with the union, but other things as well. And it's so important that we have things like this for artists. And it's a shame that we're in this position and we're having these talks, because it is, you know, it's just been an ongoing for many years issue about artist pay, and, you know, just this idea that artists will just do it for the love of, you know, for the passion. And, you know, there is elements of that, but it's yeah, times need to change. And I still think it's a very slow process, but it's one that it's really, you know, the conversations are starting to really pick up, and people are starting to get called out, and, you know, on social media and things like that. So it's really important. We've got kind of 20 minutes that we, you know, if anyone's got any questions, please do send them through, and I can definitely feed them across. We've got one here, sorry. This one says, thank you very much, Zita. I was wondering how the union is received when artists campaign for their employees to join the union.
So the employers wouldn't join the union. Do you mean employees?
Maybe an artist campaign. Yeah, I'm not wondering how the union is received when artists campaign. The artist
campaign. But I think generally it means how do employers kind of react. Yes.
Yeah, how's it received?
Yeah. So it depends on where it is. So, you know, there could be some workplaces that have large numbers of artists working where they do recognize unions, but the process of recognition, there is a system. And even in my other union, which is an established union, we organize it, in PCS. PCS is largely a civil service union, but we also organise workers in the arts and culture sector. So the workers of the museums and galleries, national museums and galleries, are members of PCS. And in some of those workplaces, some of the employers have been hostile to begin with, and they don't want to recognise straight away. So the first point would be, we would ask an employer to recognise our union. It becomes slightly tricky in that our members may just be one or two people temporarily doing 3 months contract or 6 months piece of work, or they may be the artist for that workplace, you know, the designer for that workplace. So it isn't straightforward. So unless it's somewhere like a greeting cards company, you know, where there might be lots and lots of artists working there, we're in a slightly different situation. So we're having those conversations, and we're using the good practice charter, and some employers have signed up to that. But generally across the trade union movement, you know, you've got long established trade unions in some industries and workplaces, and in others it's a slow process. So there is a process you follow, and basically you start actually with the members, because you need to get so many members to join the union. And when you have so many members join the union, then that gives us an arm to say to the employer, and it opens the door for us to say to the employer, well, X amount of your employees have joined our union, therefore you should recognise our union. And then you normally have to go through a process of negotiation with that employer. And sometimes that can take a long time, and they can be hostile and negative and not receptive. And but that doesn't stop us organising our members and mobilizing our members and running campaigns and doing things. And if they don't engage with us, actually that could be much worse. For example, if I've in my other union, there are groups of workers that have wanted to go out and strike, and actually it's in the employer's best interest to come to the negotiating table, recognize the union, but it has taken in some of those other workplaces the members doing a whole year campaign with lots of industrial action before the employer said, okay, we'll recognize this union and start negotiating with you, because they realize it's not, a good impact on them or good for their reputation. And actually, if they sat and spoke to us, they could avoid things escalating. So it's not easy, but there is a process and system to do it.
We've got another question here. Someone saying that the talk has been really informative and really inspiring, which is great, especially your acts on solidarity. But they're asking, are there any union models or other networks that you have personally found particularly influential when you were forming the key principles of the UE?
Yeah, so we did like a consultation exercise where we ran some workshops. We had like a meeting like this online, and then we broke up into groups. And in those groups, we focused on different key areas that we thought were important. And so really it came through from the members that were attending. And I guess what we used as models, if you like, is our lived experience, either within AUE, but actually quite a few of us are members of other unions as well. So I'd mentioned UCU. We've got somebody who works for a union. We've got somebody who, because they're a lecturer, they're also in that union. You've got me who's in another union. So really, rather than looking at specific models, we did draw on our lived experience of other unions and our wider work in the trade union movement. Yeah.
And we've got another attendee that's mentioned that they are an early career artist, and they were just wondering if you had any advice on how to approach about asking about pay. And they mentioned that a record label has asked to use their images, but that hasn't mentioned any form of payment for it really. So if there's any advice on about how to approach someone talking about pay.
Okay. Yes. Really, the crucial thing is a contract, because what we find is very often artists have conversations and meetings and email exchanges with people that want to use their services as an artist, and then the person that's using their service or organization that's using their service reneges on it. And we've had examples, for example, of organizations wanting to use the artwork for something like you've described in perpetuity, but they don't want to pay, enough. And so they don't seem to grasp that if you want it in perpetuity, the cost is going to go up much higher. So there's stuff around copyright, protection of your art, how they're going to use it, how is it going to be duplicated, are you going to get any royalties out of that? If it's reproduced, is it a one-off use? So all of those things really need to be in a contract, as well as, of course, the pay. But all those other things really are going to determine for you how much you're going to get paid. If it was a sample record cover that's not actually going to go into production and be published, and they're going to use a one-off image, that might be a different cost to this is a major artist and it's going to go global and they're going to use it on all their merchandise. Then, you would have to factor that in. So we have got advice and information on rates of pay on our website, but I would say get a contract, because a lot of the cases we end up dealing with are because it's all piecemeal and it's in different emails and it's gone over months, the conversations about it, then different people have left that job and somebody else is taking over the conversation, they want to renege on it. So having a written contract, and it doesn't have to be overly legalistic, it just needs to set out the key things that you're agreeing, timelines, how much you're going to be paid, when you're going to be paid, how you're going to be paid, and what it is, what's the service you're providing. So my main key advice is to agree a contract with that person or that organization.
Yeah, I think I'm talking from experience working directly with artists. Sometimes, especially those that may describe themselves as early career or not had as much experience in this, sometimes it's people feel intimidated when talking about pay, and it's not one we shouldn't be afraid to talk about that and be open and honest about that. And often you get a lot of time where people think about it being a great opportunity and I must take it up, but actually it's really important from day one, no matter what point of your career you're at, that you can have a really polite and formal conversation before about what you're going to get from it. So it's really important that that happens.
And don't devalue yourself, because if they try and say, oh, because you're just starting off, we're going to give you a different rate of pay. No, it doesn't work like that. You're providing a service because you've got a skill and a talent and you're able to provide that service and that work. And so you should be paid for your value. They can't devalue you on grounds of age or experience, because that actually could be discriminatory in employment equality law. That they want to give you effectively, let's say you've recently graduated, most graduates are in the younger age bracket. So if that's the case and they say we want to pay you less because you're inexperienced, that's actually age discrimination and that's unlawful.
Yeah, definitely. Someone's asking, do we think there's any reasons why unionizing the arts seems to be less established than, say, other industries?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that we work in a different way and that we are contractors and self-employed, and it is that thing that we're not just going into one workplace doing one job. So for example, the fire brigade union, firefighters, their union is almost a closed shop. It's 100% membership, because they are doing one thing, they're going to a set workplace and it's very specific, because what we do is so varied and so different, and we might be totally self-employed and just doing work on a self-employed basis. We might be on a short-term contract, a fixed-term contract, a consultancy contract. So it's so variable the way we work that it's very difficult to pin it down. So that's really the reason why we're in that situation.
Would you say it's really important for artists to, I mean, it's, sometimes it's quite easy just to get lost in the work that you do and giving more hours and stuff, but would you say it's really important that we're documenting what we're working on, the actual times, and presenting that to whoever you're working from, whether it's a freelance or a kind of commission basis, and it's okay to say, actually, I've hit my hours now, and what would we do at that point?
Yes, definitely. Because otherwise you could find yourself overworking for no pay. So all the time that you put into production, research, planning, administration, all of that should be counted towards your working hours. Because if you were doing any other job, and you worked in an office and they set you a project, you're not just going to get your wages when you present that project on a PowerPoint. You're getting your wages for the entire time you're working, where you're having the meetings about it, you're doing the work around it, you're talking to your colleagues. So you really need to look at it in that same way. Any work that you're doing in the lead up to that. And we've seen examples of employers saying, oh, we just need to see some designs from you first, and then we'll decide whether we're going to give you the contract. And that's not acceptable, because if they want you to design something from scratch just for them to look at it, then they need to pay you for that. If they don't use it, that's okay, if you're okay with producing something, but they need to pay you for your time. And actually, sometimes we use quite a lot of equipment and materials, don't we, that cost a lot of money. And so those things should be factored in as well. You shouldn't be out of pocket for having done a job. So everything it costs to do that job should be covered, plus your pay. So if you're just negotiating a round figure, then you should factor in all of those costs, your heating, your lighting, phone calls, whatever it is, travel. And then you put that into your fee that you're going to charge. Sometimes it might be that you get an hourly rate for the admin and research, but however it works, definitely all of that needs to be factored in. You wouldn't ask, you know, a cleaner or a typist, oh, just do this for exposure. Yeah, you know, do it for experience. You'd pay them for their time. But this is the kind of thing we see happening to artists all the time, and it's not acceptable.
No, I mean, I was when you mentioned, when you went on one of your slides and you talked about your rates for pay, one of the things I straight away did was just quickly have a look at that, and it's really surprising. I think the kind of the day rates and the hourly rates I've seen are getting there, but the one that I saw underneath was the residency fees, and actually how you work out with like a pro rata and what is, and it just surprises me how many arts institutions and organizations are nowhere near paying what is suggested on there for artist residencies. It's quite shocking, really, when you see what's getting offered.
And like exhibiting as well, you know, we've got something there for exhibiting, because it's still your time, isn't it, going and hanging your work and putting it up there and coming to meetings and events and speaking to people. But there is an expectation on us that we'd just be happy that you know, we've got an opportunity to hang our work somewhere, but that's work at the end of the day, and we're really not treated and respected in the same way as other workers are. Yet where would the world be without art?
Exactly. Yeah. We have a question here, a statement saying that this is all really useful information and advice, and much of it that they wish that they knew earlier when they were in art education. It seems like a lot of this information should be made part of the curriculum, especially in further education. Do you think there is a place for this? And if so, do you have any advice for people working in art education, how they can make this happen?
Absolutely, I fully agree with that. And there has been like a TUC program of unions into schools, and that's a program where they, you know, effectively trade unionism is being taught to children at school age, so they know that there are bodies they can join when they join a workplace, because very often, not just in our industry, in any industry, people will go into a workplace, unless it's one where the union is very visible and there physically, then they might not know that a union exists, and all sorts of things happen to them, particularly like in your first year or 6 months or whatever probation. That's more likely when you're going to end up with a problem and instability, and then you're less likely to know that the union exists or have joined it in that time. So even in my other union, we negotiated with our employers as part of the induction program. There has to be a slot for the trade union, so people know these are the unions that are recognised in this workplace. These are the ones you can join, and this is how you join them. You can engage with them as part of your initial training. And then we do get invited to universities and colleges from time to time to give talks there. So to prepare people for when they come out and they go into industry. But yeah, you know, if those working in arts education want to invite our union or any of the other entertainment and culture sector unions, which might be relevant depending on what the course is, then we're always welcome to come and do those talks within our capacity, you know, to do it, because we're run by volunteers. If every university asked us, we'd be in difficulty. And we do ask if you have some funding to give us a donation towards doing that, you know, to financially compensate us for our time. That helps as well in carrying out that work. But we do want to get into schools, and we do want to get into universities and colleges, and we're very welcome if you invite. You know, we would welcome the opportunity if you invite us.
Yeah, it feels like it's just such a difficult sector. It feels like, like I say, in any other sector, you know, if you were asked to do something, it's quite easy to say, well, I'm not doing it for that, I'm not doing it for that pay. But whereas in the arts, it does feel like I mean, for a while, I was used to say to people, like, the only power it seems is like that, being able to withdraw from something or refuse something, or I'm not going to do that. But you don't often get that, because the artists want to show or exhibit or do a residency or work with them, and it does seem like this is the sector that is the one that's exploited the most. But I think, you know, the title of this workshop being about it being, you know, artists unite, you know, I think together, I think if, you know, this is great that this talk, and they have something they can be directed to kind of say, do you pay in line with this? And, you know, and together, I think if artists are more kind of talking to the institutions and things like that, I think it will hopefully change, and we won't have to say, oh, we'll not do it, or we'll do it for hardly any money.
And collectivism is really, really important, because that's what gives us our strength. And so if we are in a studio with other artists, or, you know, we're working in some sort of venue, even if it is as a contractor or self-employed, we can talk to other people who are artists. We can join up, because otherwise what happens is institutions and employers will kind of put you against each other. And if we're not joined up and having those conversations amongst ourselves, we don't know whether somebody else is being treated worse or better than us, when we should actually have access to the same things. And it might be down to the fact that one of us was able to negotiate that and knew how to negotiate and what to ask for and had the confidence to ask. But if we could do it collectively, it makes it much stronger. And if we have employers signing up to the good practice charter, you know, then that pins them down. Well, you have signed this, and you've signed a declaration to say you've signed up to it. So that does tie them to actually saying, then anytime we engage artists, we are going to apply these things that we've given a commitment to.
Yeah, no, it seems like we should get every kind of person, every institution to be signing up to that, to agree that this is what we're going to do, as, you know, for artists as well. So yeah, we've got about another 5-10 minutes. If anyone's got any more questions, do pop them in the Q&A box, or if it's kind of if there's no more questions, or if you prefer to kind of send them afterwards, you can do so. So yeah, I'll just see if there's any more questions that come in. Just whilst we're waiting for any last minute questions, I will just note that in the first message in the chat, there is a link there to the Culture Counts kind of Q&A survey, and it'd be great if you could just spend just a couple of minutes filling that in to get your feedback about this event. And I think there's no more questions come in, so I think all I need to do now really is thank you, Zita, so much for sharing what you do, how people can get involved, and how people can sign up. And as you say, collectively together, hopefully we can try and make it change, faster than what it should be. So thank you so much for sharing everything today.
Thank you for having me, and solidarity to everybody. We're here. Let's work together going forward.
Indeed, definitely. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.